If you are someone who is considering using ads, so paid advertising for your podcast or for your business, then this episode is going to help you set clear expectations, understand where you should be spending your money, where you should not be spending your money, and know what it is that you need to do to either spend ad money on your podcast or to promote your business, your lead magnet, and all of those other things. This episode is great for small business owners as well as those who are creating consistent content. Also, note that we do talk about if you have an interview show or if you have more solo episodes, with my recommendation to always, no matter what kind of show you have, sprinkle in those solo episodes or have a completely different other podcast that is just you sharing about your expertise. That is important. But if you're someone who is considering, are ads for me? Should I be investing in paid advertisement? This episode is going to give you everything you need to know. So please join me in welcoming Robert to the podcast. Hello, Robert. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I am so excited to talk all things paid advertising. And that is not something that I even like to touch personally. So I'm excited to talk to an expert about this. But if you could start by telling everyone who you are, what you do, and about your podcast.
Thanks, Alicia. I'm Robert Brill. I'm CEO of Brill Media, and I've worked in advertising for 20 years. And a few years ago, I started a podcast called the LA Business Podcast. And we talk about the stories of how businesses grow and scale.
Yes, such an important topic. And I love that it's LA Business Podcast, right? It's very specific. It's very to the point of who is going to be those potential listeners who would be interested in this topic. And I love when people this is what it is. Obviously, titling things I'm not great at it and like being creative with them. So listeners to leads, very clear what we're talking about here. So thinking about the future of paid advertising, thinking about the direction we're going, and to preface this by saying that I've been seeing I do a lot of reading, clearly, if anyone can see my background. I read about 250 books a year. And so I get a lot of ads for those like reading on your phone apps that are not Kindle, the ones where you have to like pay per chapter. I get a lot of ads for those. But I noticed, I want to say in the last 2-3 months, that a lot of the ads are not about the content that they're promoting or about that whatever that chapter is that they're trying to say, hey, read this chapter, it's interesting. What they're actually doing is taking a video of someone cleaning a rug or a video of someone knitting something where it stops your scroll enough but I know it's not their original content. I've seen other people post those videos. Yeah. And so it kind of feels a little disingenuous and unethical, like from a consumer point of view. And so I'm curious, with that in mind, where do you kind of see the direction of paid advertising where we can easily strip, the internet for other people's content?
So by definition, advertising means you're specifically paying to deliver a message. For a lot of consumers, it is unclear whether something is an ad or if it's just content. So what I would say is that if it's content, it's not the best to use other people's content. Like if you're seeing a post, it's really not the best to use other people's content, but I see a lot of companies doing it. There's a legal component there. If it's an ad, you should 100% definitely not use other people's content. Just straight up, hands down, don't do it. Because you're going to get yourself into dramatic trouble because you don't own the copyrights. You don't own the right to use that content. So just don't do it. And every time I see someone, an ad with like a meme in it, like a Spider-Man meme or a SpongeBob meme or something, it's like, dude, like your business is opening yourself up to real legal issues. So that's not the best practice because you want to own everything you're promoting.
Yeah. And so like as small business owners, right, it might be easy to be like, oh, I'm just going to grab this funny meme or I'm going to grab this post or grab this thing. But we really have to be super intentional and we don't want to open ourselves up to any type of legal ramifications. So social media obviously you can't predict the future, but there have been a lot of changes in how we've approached social media with the introduction of AI into people's content, writing people's content. I've seen ads for people who are like, oh, I have this AI tool that'll run ads for you and I'm getting all of these sales. And I'm like, but are you? What can we do to come up with good content that is going to be good for an ad. Now, let's talk business owners and then we can talk more podcasters specific.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, let me go back to the other point. I think it's really important to underscore. I'm not a lawyer, so none of this is legal advice. But fundamentally, every time you run an ad, you have to make a determination about the type of risk you want to take. Now, with regards to AI is an accelerant. It's like lighter fuel on a fire. You already have to have the spark of idea. You have to have this interest. You have to have this motivation and understanding of the consumer's interest. But then you should be accelerating that with AI. And what that means in practice is, like, for example, we created a chat GPT agent that allows us to do copywriting really fast and far more effectively. And it allows us to offer copywriting services, and also pass along discounts to our clients. So that's an example of an acceleration, the good use of AI for the benefit of accelerating a task you're already doing. Now, we're not doing it in a vacuum. We do curate the content, and we do need to make decisions about which ads are the most effective for our clients. But fundamentally, it takes 20 or 30 minutes rather than many hours and the cost of another human being. So I think any business that is looking for an edge or leg up is using AI. I think it's really important to be a tech tinkerer. Like, you don't have to start out with the interest of using AI for your business, but you should have start out with a level of curiosity for how you're going to use AI in your daily life. Like, for example, I don't use Photoshop. I mean, I do a little bit for my business, but not like the people who make masterpieces on Photoshop, right? But I can go to Midjourney via Discord and identify a prompt and create imagery for that. And we've used imagery from Midjourney in our ads, and they perform well. But fundamentally, you have to start with a spark of interest and curiosity or consumer insight, and then let AI accelerate what you do.
So I love what you said there. Like, even thinking about ads, right? So if we're coming up with ads, we're coming up with ideas of what would work as an ad, whether we're business owners or podcasters. You can't just say, oh, I'm a new podcaster, I have this new idea, and I'm just going to throw some money at it in ads. Like, I don't think that makes sense. And I don't recommend that people do that.
No.
I'm thinking you're probably feeling very similarly. At what point should we come to a decision on whether it makes sense to use ads within our business or to use ads for our content, our podcast? And I'm thinking the podcast could be a placeholder for any type of consistent content that we're coming up with.
100%. So the answer to that, the short answer to that, and I'll expand on it, is, do you have product market fit? And product market fit is this fundamental thing that where you know what to say and how to say it and how to price your service or product such that people are going to spend money with you. So with regard specifically to a podcast, the fundamental question is, how do you monetize your podcast? Is it with advertising? Is it with as a conduit to connecting with leads and selling them services? Is it a way to gain, what does success look like? Maybe success is not even about money. Maybe success is about power or getting a cool job or whatever the case is. So you have to understand your goal with the podcast. What are you trying to accomplish on it? And then work your way backwards to understand then, what can I do today to achieve the goals that I want to get to in a year or 5 years from now? And that, what I just described, are the essentials of having a strategy. Now, the only thing that a lot of podcasters or individuals who are not advertising experts don't have is the knowledge and the intricacies of marketing and advertising. And by the way, no one expects you to have that expertise, because just like I've been working in advertising for 20 years, but you hand me a hammer and tell me that the car is broken, nothing I can do about it. Right? We pay doctors and lawyers and mechanics and plumbers a lot of money because they fix a problem for us immediately. So when we talk about product market fit, how do you determine product market fit? Number one, you look for the ability to solve an urgent problem. Remember how I said plumbers and lawyers and doctors fix an urgent problem? Product market fit also happens when you are able to fix an urgent problem. It's also, you have to have the right audience size, meaning, like, so for example, in Los Angeles, you don't ever see Caribbean fast food. I'm sure it'd be great. I would probably eat it. But the fundamental truth is that probably companies have tried, and there's probably not enough people who want Caribbean fast food for there to be a market. So you're not going to have product market fit if you don't have enough people who want your service. And then fundamentally, you need to go into the market and test a bunch of different things to figure out the intricacies of how to go to market in a way that's effective. Like for my business, it took me 2 years to go to market effectively. And I had to figure out the product market fit over that time. So, what we do is really focus on the fundamentals. It's all the boring stuff. What I just described as product market fit is if you're a restaurant, a flower shop, a yoga studio, a B2B services company, a software company, a podcaster, it's the fundamentals of just boring business stuff that helps you achieve
Yeah,
success.
that is something that and my background is in marketing. So my degree's in marketing. And I have never seen anyone who talks about launching a podcast talk about market research. And that is something that we pride ourselves in. All of our clients get regularly updated market research, and we look at what other podcasters are doing. We look at where they can differentiate themselves. Like, that is where we focus because nobody else is wanting to do the boring work, right? People are like, oh, I have this great idea for a product. I have this great idea for a podcast. I'm going to throw it out there and everybody's going to come hoarding to my podcast and it's going to be great. And it's like, sadly, that's not really what happens. But if you're super clear on your message, on who that audience is, where you fit in the market, you can get there a lot quicker with the right listeners. And I think that what you're talking about is like, yes, this is boring to people who are maybe not in marketing, but it's so fundamentally important for us as business owners and as podcasters. So if you have them and if you can consider them, what are some maybe numbers that we should be looking at? So maybe 2 years of consistently showing up on a podcast to feel like we really have an idea, a certain number of responses from our listeners. Where should we maybe start looking to make sure that we've nailed down that market?
Yeah. So I don't have good metrics for you there. What I can tell you is I have a friend who's a very talented personality. Like in the advertising business, he's the funny one of many funny people, and he'll get up on stage and tell jokes that people still tell like a decade later. Okay, so he's that person. So his measure of success, he's on I don't know the name of the show, but he's on a show with another personality, and their measure of success is going to be dramatically different than my measure of success because we have two fundamentally different goals. He wants to build his entertainment through podcast career, and on my podcast, I want to generate revenue by talking to leads. So success is going to be very different, right? So I would say a few things. You want to ask yourself if the podcast is serving you. Like, are you getting what you need to get out of it? And yeah, I would say at least 10 or 20 podcasts is going to be relevant before you start hitting your stride. I went through 3 mics over the course of a few years, maybe even 4. I have the Focusrite, I have the cloud filter, and I have all these wires. And literally, if I ever had to unplug any of them, I wouldn't know how to put them back. Like if I ever had to move, I'm definitely terrified of moving. Because if I have to move, there's no chance that I'll be able to figure it out in like the first hour of how all these things interconnect to each other. So like I just don't touch them. Right. So you've got to understand why you're doing something. And I did it because this was my measure of success and what I was doing. I created about 120 episodes of the podcast. And my goal was very simple. I'm going to meet people who I want to work with. And then I'm going to solicit them at the end of the conversation. And some of them turned into relationships. I mean, that's it. But I stopped doing the podcast for a while after a while because my priorities had shifted. We had earned a few tens of thousands of revenue on that, but the juice was not worth the squeeze. I wasn't as into it as I was at the beginning. And I just said, okay, this will be the last one. So I think as a person embarking on this initiative, you really have to understand what your goals are and be very clear. Part of the thing was I was like, I'll create another IP, another intellectual property, and maybe I'll be the next, Joe Rogan or Howard Stern. Come on, I didn't put any effort into that. Like I'd get on shows and I'd be like, all right, cool. I do the research on who you are 10 minutes before the show, if that. And that's horrible. That's a bad way to conduct an interview.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm feeling more tense and anxious than anything. I don't want to keep doing this. Like that's not
Right.
the right way. I had to understand that my motivations were very different than what I was willing to put in the work for.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm pretty sure I have an episode where I talk about like when to know when to stop, right? Like how do you know when it's time? And I've had conversations and strategy sessions with people who are years in and they're like, I don't love it anymore, but I'm scared to let it go. What does the future of, and I like podcasting, but this form of it just doesn't feel right. So we look at how to shift it, how to tweak it, how to be more clear and go after it so that it is exciting. So it is something that you're interested in. Or maybe you just need to let it go and focus on something else, right? Like both of those are okay. So I love that you had that self awareness to be able to say, yes, this served me for the purpose that it had. But once, and your listeners can hear it, once your heart stops
Yeah.
being in it, you really have to decide if it is for you. So you mentioned like 20, 30 episodes. I'm thinking for people who have interview style podcasts, marketing your podcast via paid advertising might not be the best bet if your goal is to generate leads, right? So at that point, you're talking about somebody else or somebody else's conversation that you've had. What are kind of your thoughts on that?
100%. I think if it's an interview podcast, you have to really understand how you monetize. I didn't do that. I probably wouldn't do that. The only way I probably spent a few dollars on promoting it is when I guaranteed some sort of, or where it was a friend of mine and I wanted to make sure that, they got the proper visibility to the show. But to market a show, you're building community. The benefit of podcasts is you're in someone's ear. People get to know you and your personality. And over time, if they like you, it forms a really sort of meaningful relationship that they have with you, but you don't have with them, which is kind of weird. But I think it's valuable to create content, to create clips, to push out content on social media, and to engage with people. And really good content rises to the top, but it's a ton of effort to get to those clips, to do that editing, to post on social consistently. I think there's a lot more we could have done on our show, for example, than we actually did, which is a little bit of a shame. But yeah, marketing,
Yeah.
not advertising.
I love what you said. It was toward the beginning where you talked about like being super clear on when you're advertising, you are meeting an immediate need. Most of the conversations that, the everyday person has is not going to meet an immediate need, right? From the podcast episodes. So if I think of like true crime podcast episodes, they're probably not going to meet an immediate need. But that is why I highly recommend that people have sprinkled in solo episodes, even if they terrify you. Get some solo episodes in there where you are able to show up as the expert, that you can then maximize those episodes through repurposing them into full length blog posts, repurposing them into articles, being able to use them as, hey, I spoke on this topic. I would love to speak at your event. Here's a clip of what I said, using it for all of those different ways to be able to showcase how awesome you are and what you do as a business owner. And those are the episodes that you maybe want to be pushing some money towards. When it comes to, all right, I have a very limited understanding of how to get started. I understand that there are TikTok ads, there are Facebook ads, there are X ads, formerly known as Twitter, LinkedIn ads. There are all of these different places.
Yeah.
How do I know where to start? Because obviously, I don't want to spread my money over all of them as a small business owner. Like, I want to be focused. How do I know where to get started? And is the podcast or is maybe my lead magnet a better idea to start with, to test out those different things before I start talking about that evergreen content?
I'll give you the more important answer and
Okay.
then I'll give you the shortcut. The more important answer is you have to have a strategy. And the strategy, when you pair that information with an expert, will give you, the strategy will help you define where to run the ads. So the strategy helps you look at your goals, what you've done in the past, the transformative value, the types of customers you have, etc., and put all that together and say, look, your customers have these behaviors, so you should be on these platforms. Now I'll give you a sort of a shortcut on how to kind of like determine on your own. 45% of all digital advertising in 2024 will be spent on Google and Meta. So chances are your ad should be on Google and Meta. Chances are that's where your customers are. If you're a business to business advertiser, then you probably should be on LinkedIn. LinkedIn does really well if you know how to set it up correctly. If you are tech or politics, you should be on X. If you are a female-focused brand, you should probably be on Pinterest. And if your brand is generally under 35, you should probably be on TikTok. Here's why you need more information than what I just said. Facebook and Instagram, for example. Meta has the most powerful algorithm in the marketplace. Chances are, if your customer is under 35, you might think you should go to TikTok, but Facebook will probably really outperform for you. That's one component. The second thing is you don't want to have these platforms competing against each other. You're not looking at your advertising performance and saying, well, I'm going to compare how good Meta did to how good Google did, because Meta will generate interest and convert some of them into customers, and Google will convert a bunch of people as well. But the interest that you generate from Facebook or Instagram will show up as stronger performance on Google ads. So like if you run ads on Hulu, for example, on connected TV, you're not going to see the same level of conversion activity. You're not going to see the number of leads and sales you're going to get. But the people who see you on Hulu with your 15 and 30-second ads will start to see you on Google, and your Google ads will start to perform. And your search engine optimization, your organic links will start to perform better. So you're basically creating a symphony through the orchestra of your advertising channels.
Oh, that's, first of all, beautiful way to describe that. And I'm even thinking about like, oh yeah, seeing this ad in this one place. And most people, I don't remember, I think it's what, 7 times that someone has to see something typically before they're like,
It's
right
probably like
at this
20,
point. I
30
know
at
our
this point.
attention spans are so limited now. But like, okay, you have to see them at multiple places. You have to see them on multiple platforms to be like, okay, I'm finally gonna bite the bullet. Like, like you have to see it multiple times. And I think that if we can be strategic, right? I love that you said that. And this is something that I say so often is the strategy depends. Like it depends. The answer to your question, it depends on so many different factors and so many different things. So thank you for breaking that down first, but then also giving us some things that we can consider as we go into this. And also that
Yeah.
maybe we don't put all of our eggs in one basket, that we do need to be in multiple places and to help them, piggyback off of one another to perform well. So that's really good to know. Is there anything else that we need to know as business owners? At what point should we be like, all right, you need to just stop DIYing it. You need to just hire somebody to help because this is clearly not either the right strategy for you or the right platform for you. What are some things that we should be considering that are like, okay, this is not working?
Yeah. Number one, don't boost a post on Meta because that's a waste of money. Don't promote on TikTok. That's the equivalent. The barrier to entry for us is $1,500 a month. If you have $1,500 a month, we can work with you to run ads. 1,000 of that goes to the advertising, and $500 comes to us. So it's a low barrier to entry, relatively speaking. And what you really want to be looking at when we talk about running ads on multiple platforms, it doesn't mean that you have to double your budget. It means you should split your budget, and it means you should test and understand where you can improve and where you should slow down on your ad spending. So those are key elements. The other component is you need time. Time is going to be on your side for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're going to get smarter about what works and what doesn't for your advertising, for your business. The algorithms also get smarter about how to find your customers. So advertising is a practice. Not to say that we're practicing on your money. It's much more about collaborating and understanding the chemistry of what works for your business at this moment in time. Because what worked 4 years ago probably doesn't work today. The messaging is different. The way you develop ads is different. What you say, because you know more about your customers, is different. So a lot of our job is really to help steward the process so that you get the most return out of that investment. And the way we do that is through the testing, to the helping you understand the intricacies, real-time feedback, all that stuff. That's what you get when you work with an expert. Otherwise, you're just hitting the boost button and you're wasting money for likes, comments, and shares. You need actual leads and sales.
And that is the focus, right? Like you want to, if you're spending money on these platforms, you want to be getting something in return, and likes don't pay the bills at all. Sorry, not sorry. So what I'm hearing is think about your ad strategy, think about your ad journey like you would a podcast journey, like you would a YouTube journey.
Yeah.
This is a long game. This is not something that you're going to pick up and drop in a month, pick up and drop in 3 months. You need to be giving it time and focus and effort in order to get the results that you want.
It's business. Like it's basic business stuff. Whatever your business is, the principles, the foundational components are the same.
Absolutely. I don't understand where people get this idea of like, yes, it's going to magically happen. And all of a sudden I'm going to get thousands of likes and thousands of people. It's like, guys, please. Like that's not how it works. So I'm sure you deal with some very similar, needing to regulate people's expectations up front. I do the same.
Look, setting expectations is one of the best ways to set up for success. When things go south, it's because expectations weren't properly set.
Yes. So true. So, so true. Thank you so much, Robert. This has been so fantastic and very informational and educational. And I think that we can take a lot from here. But if people are like, look, I need help and I need some support, or I need to get started with Robert and his team, where can people go to find out more about you and your business and also listen to your podcast?
Yeah, so our website is brillmedia.co, B as in boy, RILL media.co. I think our podcast is on there /podcast. There's also LA Business Podcast,
Perfect. We'll make
labusinesspodcast.com.
sure that we link all of that in the description and the show notes. And that way people can get those links as well if they're traveling or driving while they're listening. We've got those for you as well. Robert, again, thank you so much. This has been so good.